We have all met one. Maybe it was a coworker who always had a story that was just a little too perfect. Maybe it was a date whose past seemed to shift like sand depending on the conversation. Or maybe it was a friend whose tragedies were always louder, deeper, and more dramatic than anyone else's. At first, they're captivating, they're charming, they pull you in with the magnetism of their lives. But then, the glitch appears. You notice a detail that doesn't align. You remember they told the story differently last week. A mutual friend mentioned something that contradicts their timeline, and suddenly the image collapses. You realize you aren't talking to a person, you are talking to a performance. It leaves you with a deep sense of confusion. Why lie about things that don't matter? Why invent a life when the real one is right there? Is it malice? Is it a game? To the outsider, the chronic liar looks like a manipulator. But if we peel back the layers of their psychology, we find something far more tragic, complex, and desperate. We find a brain that is literally addicted to fiction. Today, we're going to walk through the mind of the chronic liar. We're going to explore the psychological mechanisms that drive them to deceive, the chemical highs they get from it, and the lonely reality of living inside a house of cards. To understand the mechanics of the lie, we must first understand the wound that necessitates it. For the average healthy person, the concept of the truth is neutral. It is just a record of what happened. If we had a boring Tuesday, we say we had a boring Tuesday. We're comfortable with the mundane nature of existence. But for the chronic liar, the truth is not neutral, but an enemy. This pathology almost always stems from what psychologists call a fragile self-concept. Deep down, beneath the bravado and the stories, the chronic liar hides a destructive belief. The real me is not enough. They perceive their actual life, their real history, their real personality, their real achievements as deeply inadequate. They look at themselves and see a void. They believe that if they were to present their naked, honest self to the world, they would be met with indifference or rejection. They view ordinariness as a form of social death. So they become architects. They begin to construct a false self. Think of this like a prosthetic limb. If you were missing an arm, you might wear a prosthetic to function. The chronic liar feels they're missing a personality, so they build one out of fabrications. They don't just tell lies to escape consequences, they tell lies to build a character. This is why their stories often fall into two specific categories: heroism or victimhood. Notice that the chronic liar is never just a bystander in their own stories. They are either the hero who outsmarted the system, saved the day, and stood up to the bully, or they are the tragic victim who has suffered more illnesses, more stalkers, and more bad luck than anyone else in history. They're trying to hallucinate a better version of themselves into existence, using you as the mirror. They need you to believe the lie, because if you believe it, then for a fleeting moment, it becomes true. If you look at them with admiration, they feel admirable. If you look at them with pity, they feel significant. They are borrowing your belief to fill their own void. One of the most common misconceptions about chronic liars is that they live in a constant state of guilt. We imagine them lying awake at night, tortured by their deception. While some do feel shame, the primary emotion driving the behavior is actually pleasure. When a normal person tells a lie, the autonomic nervous system kicks in. The heart rate spikes, palms sweat, and cortisol, the stress hormone, floods the system. Our body is biologically wired to prefer the truth, but the chronic liar's brain has rewired itself to seek a different chemical, dopamine. There's a phenomenon in behavioral psychology known as duping delight. It was coined by the researcher Paul Ekman, and it describes the distinct, intense thrill that comes from successfully deceiving another person. It's a power trip. When the liar looks you in the eye, tells you a complete fabrication, and watches you nod in agreement, they get a rush of superiority. They have successfully controlled your perception of reality. They have rewritten the script, and you are playing your part perfectly. In that moment, they are not the broken, insecure person they fear they are. They are the puppet master. They are smarter than you. They are faster than you. This creates a dopamine loop identical to gambling addiction. Think about a gambler at a slot machine. It isn't just the winning that is addictive, it's the risk. For the chronic liar, the risk of being caught adds to the high. This explains one of the most baffling behaviors we see, the pointless lie. We've all caught them lying about something completely irrelevant, what they ate for lunch, which bus they took, or whether they've seen a specific movie. We ask ourselves, why lie about that? They lie because the content doesn't matter. The act of lying is the drug. Every time they pass a counterfeit fact past your radar, they get a hit. They're testing their powers. They are proving to themselves over and over again that they can bend the world to their will. While they may enjoy the rush, the maintenance of this lifestyle is neurologically exhausting. To the observer, the liar seems casual, maybe even relaxed. But if we could look inside their brain with an MRI, we would see a storm of activity in the prefrontal cortex. Telling the truth is cognitively cheap. You simply access a memory and convert it into speech. It's a straight line. Lying is cognitively expensive. It requires a massive amount of what psychologists call executive function. To tell a successful lie, their brain must perform 3 complex tasks simultaneously. Inhibition, they must actively suppress the truth which is trying to surface naturally. Construction, they must invent a scenario that adheres to the laws of physics, logic, and the context of the conversation. And monitoring, they must watch your face for signs of suspicion, while also scanning their own memory to ensure this new lie doesn't contradict a lie they told you 3 weeks ago. They are playing 4-dimensional chess against themselves every minute of every day. This state of constant hypervigilance takes a heavy physical toll. This is why if you observe them closely, you will often see cracks in the veneer. They might be prone to sudden irritability. They might seem exhausted for no reason. They might have trouble focusing on other tasks. Their CPU is constantly running at 99% usage just to keep the simulation going. This also explains why they often seem emotionally distant even when they're being vulnerable. They cannot truly connect with you in the moment because they're too busy managing the script. In those moments, they're not listening to you. They're calculating what their character should say next. There's a chilling evolution that happens when someone lies chronically for years. Eventually, the barrier between their fiction and their reality begins to dissolve. This brings us to the concept of confabulation, or honest lying. Human memory is not a video recording stored on a hard drive, it's reconstructive. Every time you recall a memory, you're essentially rebuilding it from scratch. And every time you rebuild it, it changes slightly. For the chronic liar who tells the same fabricated stories over and over again with intense emotion and visualization, the brain begins to treat these fabrications as real memories. This is known as mythomania. They describe the car accident they were never in. They describe the final words of the dying parent who was actually still alive. They describe the boardroom where they closed the $1 million deal. And as they speak, they're not just making it up, they are seeing it. Their brain is firing the same neural pathways it would fire if the event had actually occurred. This is the most dangerous stage of the pathology. It's why when you finally confront them with irrefutable proof, texts, emails, receipts, they don't break down and confess. Instead, they get angry. They look genuinely hurt. They might even cry, because in their mind, you are the one attacking the truth. They have gaslit themselves so effectively that they are now the victim of their own invention. This makes rational conflict resolution impossible. You are arguing facts. They are defending their reality. So, what happens to the relationships in the orbit of a chronic liar? The trajectory is almost always the same. It follows a distinct cycle of idealization, deception, and discard. In the beginning, the chronic liar is often the most exciting person in the room. They know exactly what you want to hear. Because they are chameleons, they can mirror your interests and values perfectly. If you love art, suddenly they have an art history background. If you love hiking, they have climbed Kilimanjaro. They idealize you. They rush into intimacy because they need an audience for their new character. You feel seen, you feel special, and you bond quickly. Then comes the deception phase. The stories start, the crises begin. You find yourself constantly emotionally rescuing them from their dramatic lives. You defend them to others. You ignore the red flags because you are invested in the potential of who they are. But eventually, the discard is inevitable. The chronic liar lives in terror of one thing: exposure. Intimacy, by definition, requires vulnerability. It requires letting someone see the messy, boring, unpolished parts of your soul. The chronic liar cannot do this. They know that if you get too close, if you look in the closet, you will see the skeletons. So, the moment you start to ask the right questions, the moment you start to notice the inconsistencies, they panic. They will not stay and fight for the relationship. They will run. They will sabotage the connection. They will pick a fight over nothing, accuse you of being crazy or unsupportive, and then vanish. They would rather destroy the relationship on their terms than risk the humiliation of being unmasked. They discard you before you can discover them. To truly understand this behavior, we have to look at where it began. Chronic liars are not born, they are made. Usually, if we look at the childhood of a chronic liar, we find an environment where the truth was unsafe. Perhaps they grew up with severely strict authoritarian parents, where the punishment for small mistakes was disproportionate. In this environment, lying became a survival tool. It was the shield they used to protect themselves from emotional or physical harm. They learned that the truth equals pain, and a good story equals safety. Or conversely, they grew up in an environment of neglect. They were invisible children. The only time they received attention was when something dramatic happened, when they were sick or hurt or in trouble. So they learned a different lesson. The truth is boring, and boring people are ignored. To be loved, one must be extraordinary. To be seen, one must be in crisis. They carry these childhood survival scripts into adulthood. The problem is the scripts no longer work. What saved them as a child is destroying them as an adult. They are stuck in a developmental loop. A terrified child wearing a grown-up's face, still trying to perform for the approval of a parent who is no longer in the room. This brings us to the final tragic reality of the chronic liar's life. From the outside, we might hate them, we might feel used, we might want revenge. But the greatest punishment for a chronic liar is simply being who they are. They are destined for a life of profound isolation. Think about the people you love. You love them for their quirks, their weaknesses, their true histories. The chronic liar never experiences this. They are surrounded by people, but they are completely alone. They have friends, partners, spouses, but they know deep in the darkest corner of their mind that these people do not love them. They love the avatar. They love the mask. If the mask were to slip, the liar believes the love would vanish. This creates a pervasive imposter syndrome. Even when they succeed, they cannot enjoy it because they feel it was obtained fraudulently. They can never truly relax. They can never truly rest. They are the night watchmen of their own life, forever patrolling the borders of their lies, terrified of the sunrise. If you have a chronic liar in your life, you are likely exhausted. You have tried to catch them, you have tried to help them, you have tried to fix them. But you must understand that you cannot logic someone out of a behavior that is based on emotional survival. You cannot use facts to cure a disorder of reality. The only way to deal with a chronic liar is to understand the language they are actually speaking. When they tell you a grandiose lie about their success, they are not really bragging. They are saying, "I feel incredibly small. Please tell me I matter." When they tell you a fake story about a tragedy, they are not just looking for attention. They are saying, "I am in pain, but I don't know how to ask for comfort unless I am bleeding." You do not have to accept the lies. You do not have to stay in the relationship. In fact, for your own sanity, you often have to walk away. But as you walk away, try to replace your anger with a quiet form of pity. Do not envy their exciting stories. Do not envy their apparent confidence, because at the end of the day, you get to go home to the truth. You get to be loved for who you actually are. You get to rest. They do not. They are travelers who burned their passports, doomed to wander from town to town, reinventing themselves for strangers, hoping that maybe in the next city with the next story, they will finally feel real. If this resonated with you, and if you believe that the truth is always better than a pretty lie, hit that like button so more people can find this. And if you want more deep dives into the dark corners of human psychology that nobody else talks about, hit subscribe. And remember, the most exhausting thing in the world is pretending to be someone else. The most liberating thing in the world is finally being yourself.